Okay, so today I just want to talk about Dark Night of the Soul. This is not an easy experience, very challenging. Essentially, so my take on what the Dark Night of the Soul is kind of similar to an existential crisis in where we will go through an experience that causes us to question a lot of things in our life, question our identity, the meaning of life, our purpose, that sort of thing. But with the Dark Night of the Soul, I really believe that the purpose of it is to try to redirect us to a path that is in better alignment with what our soul came here to do. So the way in my experience it plays out is that typically the universe will send us like kind of smaller like opportunities or challenges or obstacles that serve as a like trying to get our attention, trying to redirect us, kind of offering us an opportunity to change course. And I think the more we ignore that, like they'll keep sending things, and eventually it'll get to the point where I kind of feel like it's getting to the point of like no return, and they'll send like something big. In my experience, so for me, it was the loss of someone very close to me. It was a very traumatic experience, very difficult experience, and that was absolutely a dark night of the soul for me, and a huge catalyst that forced me to just like reconsider everything in my life. And it essentially, everything in my life that had built up around me that was not in alignment and that was not authentic began to crumble. And the upside is that you're left with the things that are right. You start to see what does matter. And, whether it's people, whether it's a job, an environment, whatever the case may be, it's like if you allow that experience to transform you for the better, it will. And the things that are not meant for you will fall away if you allow them to. And so, yeah, for me, it was a loss. I think for a lot of people, it probably is loss, but it could be different things. Loss of a job, loss of a home, a friendship, a relationship, or a health issue, I think is another big one, because the body works in the same way. It'll, if something's wrong, it'll say, we'll get like a pain signal. And if we ignore it, or like an infection, if we ignore it, then it gets worse and worse and worse until it like has to yell at you to get your attention, to pay attention, to take care of it. So I really think that like a dark night of the soul is the same type of idea, where it's trying to get our attention to redirect us to a path that is more in alignment with our soul and our authentic selves. So yeah, and it takes time. It takes a long time, because it really, in my experience too, it's sort of, because I had a lot of obviously grief that came along with that, and all the emotions that come along with grief, it sort of acted like a vacuum for me, that experience, where it kind of opened the floodgates to processing like everything. It wasn't just about that loss. It just took everything with it, like from the prior 20 years of my life that hadn't been processed and hadn't been dealt with. It just brought it all with it. And I mean, ultimately, that was a good thing, because like I'm so much happier now. I've processed so much. I've been able to let go of so much. All these things that were like holding me back, I've been able to process and let go of and heal, which has made me a much happier person. And I'm a much more authentic person now, because I was forced to sort of let go of all these things that didn't matter, and all these things that weren't really me, or that I was doing for the wrong reasons. Like all that shit just fell away. And then what was left is just like me, my authentic self. And now I'm on a completely different path. At the time I was a fashion buyer. I've been doing that for, well, when it happened, I had just like, it happened like literally months before I started my first like real job in that career. Like it happened the month I graduated from college. So it was, yeah, I'd say it took me it's been 10 years. And, you know, obviously a lot has changed over that time. There's been a lot of progress over that time, but it's like now on the other end of it, like my life is, I'm a psychic medium. Like there's no, like, you wouldn't have been able to convince me that this is where I would be. Like, you know, I feel like you hear a lot of people say that it's like, I wouldn't have never imagined. But like, also at the same time, like looking back, like I see the breadcrumbs, like I'm like, oh, this actually makes like a lot of sense. And I saw the signs, and I think, you know, I wasn't ready. I'm like, fair enough. Like I had a lot of healing work I had to do in order to be able to do this work. And yeah, so the dark night of the soul was essentially like the universe being like, hey, like, you're clearly not happy. And the reason you're not happy is this because this is not where you're meant to be. You're not in an environment where you don't feel seen. You're not able to use your strengths. You know, the inherent gifts and talents that you have are not being utilized. You're not happy. And, you know, when we're in that place, we're not helping the world, right? Like, we're not making the world a better place by being like unfulfilled and like in a job that isn't serving us or like making us happy. And, you know, we're not serving the world, right? It's just like one less light that isn't shining. So yeah, I would say it was like a 10-year process for me. And, you know, it wasn't 10 years, it wasn't like that whole 10 years was a whole entire dark night of the soul, but it was like that process of like everything kind of crumbling and me like processing everything that needed to get dealt with and releasing everything that wasn't authentic. It like that whole process, and then like coming out on the other end on a path that is now like where I feel like I'm in such authentic alignment with my soul. Like I feel it, I know it. It's like I've never been this happy. I've never felt like I could be myself in such a way. And like what I'm doing feels so meaningful to me now. And like I'm able to use things that like I'm inherently good at, and the things I deeply care about matter in what I'm doing. So it's like it all makes sense. Like I know that I'm in alignment now. So I know it was worth it, but it's very difficult. It's a very difficult experience. And I'd say my biggest advice is try to see it as an opportunity for your best and highest good, instead of seeing it as like something that's happening to you or like being a victim of it. And, you know, like I felt that way like for the first couple of years, like, why is this happening to me? Like, you know, but you just got to keep going. And if you keep digging, eventually, I think if you just keep trying, you will get to a place where your mindset will shift to where you can start to use it as an opportunity for good. So I would highly recommend therapy, like 100% if you can. Also, like, even if it's just for support, you know, like obviously talking or like processing our stuff is really important, but support is also really important too. And that can be a big help. Also would highly recommend meditation. Meditation helps to quiet things down, because our world is full of distractions, constant stimulation. And how are we supposed to be in tune or hear our inner voice if all we hear is noise, right? So meditation helps to quiet the noise so we can hear our inner voice. And the inner voice is what guides us to a path that is for our best and highest good, and what's authentic and what's true for us. So meditation, highly recommend, even if it's just initially to get the mind to quiet down. A lot of times, you know, for me, definitely, my mind was not on my team. My mind was probably my biggest bully. One of my biggest obstacles was not working for me, was not on my team. And so that in itself took a lot of time of just trying to like rewire, like first like quieting it. Well, first you really like, you just start to pay attention. Like you just start to listen to what it's saying. And you're like, what the fuck? Like, no wonder I feel like shit. Like my mind is just constantly telling me that I'm like worthless and nothing will ever work out and everything will always like fall apart. And like, it's like just like a constant stream of like negativity. Like, well, no wonder I feel like shit. So like, first of all, it's just like, let's just like pay attention to what's going on. And then you're like, oh, okay. And then you start to rewire it. You start to quiet it. And you become in control of your mind. And your mind doesn't control you. You become in control of your mind, and then your mind starts to become a tool for good instead of a tool for self-sabotage and defeat and low self-esteem, you know? So really important. So those two things, therapy, meditation, and or stillness of some kind, quieting things down, and compassion, so important. Just have compassion for yourself. That in itself will shift your frequency in a huge way. Like just having compassion for yourself will shift you out of like judging yourself and like shaming yourself from like, you know, being human and having feelings and going through an experience into like, it just will shift your frequency, and it will like, again, it's just like one less bully, one less thing that you have to like protect yourself against is yourself, right? When you start to have compassion for yourself. So really, really important. Yeah. So Dark Night of the Soul is about transformation. If you do tarot, it would be the Tower card in tarot. It's like everything crumbles so that you can rebuild something that is better. And it's a learning experience. It's about growth. It's about transformation. It's about like surrendering to the process and like learning to trust in the universe and learning to trust in your soul, and that your soul is trying to guide you to something that is for your best and highest good. So yeah, just have compassion for yourself. Try to see it as an opportunity to get in alignment, to, you know, get a handle on the mind, the ego. You know, if you haven't done any work on the ego, highly recommend that as well, because the ego just wants to keep us safe, and a lot of times that means safe to the ego means like small and scared and like familiar and comfortable. So it's not going to help us to grow and shine our light if the ego is the one running the show, you know? So yeah, Dark Night of the Soul really is a gift. I wouldn't have said that 10 years ago, 8 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, but definitely now. I see it as absolutely a gift. My life would not be what it is now if that hadn't happened, and I'm actually incredibly grateful for that experience, as difficult as it was. Grief is the great transformer. If you let it, it will change your life for the better. So yeah, that's all I have to say about that. If you have any questions, please feel free, and we'll see you next time. And also, if you are going through Dark Night of the Soul, like, I'm sending you so much love. You will be okay. I promise you. Lots of love.